Investing in Canada can be quite overwhelming, but don't worry, I will let you know absolutely everything you need to know about investing in Canada. And I want you to sit down and focus on everything I'm about to outline. Don't be discouraged by it. The more you wait on this, the more money you're losing. Because it's almost crazy to say that you're losing the opportunity to make free money. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get to it right away. GIC, RSP, FHSA, PFSA, ETFs. Now, what the heck are all of those? Investing is all about your risk tolerance. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. And basically, there are 3 risk types of investments. GICs are the safest kinds of investments that you can make in your portfolio. GICs are pretty simple. Let's assume you're about to put $1,000 on a guaranteed investment account, and assuming that you have a yearly rate of 10%. What that means is that the $1,000 gets stored into that account every single year. You will be generating $100 from that $1,000, and that is guaranteed. Usually banks will offer 2 types of GICs. There are cashable GICs, like for example, savings accounts, where you can put money in and also retrieve them at your leisure, but there's also non-cashable GICs, which are funds that you're not allowed to retrieve up until a certain due date. So it really just depends on your case. If you feel like you need to retrieve the money anytime soon, don't go with the non-cashable GIC. But if you don't think that you're going to be touching this money anytime soon, then feel free to put money on a non-cashable GIC account with a term that suits your financial needs. Now, on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to risk, you've got stocks. Stocks are the riskiest types of investments that you can make with your money. In short, when you buy a share or a stock from a company, you basically have a certain ownership of the company. For example, if you own 1 share of Apple, congratulations, you own around 1/1,000,000% of that company. And what makes a share desirable is that you receive dividends from it. What that means is that after a certain period of time, the company will reward you with a share of their profits. Now, the shares get constantly traded between buyers and sellers. So as such, the price of the share can completely fluctuate. When you buy a share, you are literally buying a product. So think of it this way. Sometimes you buy a product that's on sale, and suddenly the product is more expensive, so now you're able to list it for a higher price. And sometimes you buy a product at a cheap price, but then it all goes downhill from there. So the problem with stocks is the uncertainty. The stocks field is a highly competitive market. So ideally, you want to buy a stock at its low price, collect some dividends along the way, and then as soon as you get to your desired price, you sell it and you make your profit. But it's easier said than done because the majority of people that get into stock investment usually end up losing a lot of money in the process. As a beginner, I would highly discourage you from going into stocks. And instead, may I introduce you to my beautiful friend, mutual funds. So GIC is super safe. Stocks is on the riskier side, but then right in the middle, you've got ETFs and mutual funds. Mwah. Just perfectly in the middle right there. The easiest way that I can explain the mutual fund system is that instead of investing in one particular company, you're instead investing in a pool of companies. So for example, the biggest mutual fund holdings is the S&P 500. Which is basically the top 500 companies in America, all listed in a pool, and the price of the mutual fund is a weighted average of all of the shares' prices. So out of those 500 companies, let's assume that one of them goes bankrupt, but then several other companies have gone up in value. Well, that's okay. So what matters in a mutual fund is that the majority of the companies you're investing to go up in value. That said, the likelihood is that all of the prices of those stocks are going to fluctuate. So in general, the price of a mutual fund is not volatile, which means it doesn't change quite frequently. It might go up a bit slowly, might go down a bit slowly, but it will never really spike up or down quite quickly, at least not frequently. All right, we covered the different risks when it comes to investing. Now, there are different ways that you can invest your money. You've got TFSA, RSP, FHSA, and regular type of investments. Now, here is something I want to clarify that brings a lot of confusion to people. It brought a lot of confusion to me when I first invested too. Is that the ways of investment that I just laid out, those are methods to invest that applies to any of the risk types of investments that I laid out earlier. So for example, you could create a GIC TFSA account to invest your funds. Now, what the hell are all those terms? Let's start with regular investment. So regular investment, there's nothing really special about it. Let's bring the GIC example one more time. You put $1,000 in and you get 10% back every year. But the government wants its money. That $100 you've just made is taxable because you have just made income. So now, assuming that you're making $60,000 a year, now your total annual income would be $60,100 now. So the $60,100 is now taxable. But let's say you want to avoid giving money for the tax man. May I introduce you to my lovely friend, the TFSA account? TFSA, tax-free savings account. Any money you make from that account is tax-free. So bringing back that same scenario, so instead of you putting $1,000 into a regular savings account for GIC, so now you've put $1,000 on a TFSA GIC account and you made $100. Congrats. Now, all of that earning is tax-free. So if you're making $60,000 a year, you will only be taxed yearly for $60,000. That $100 you made, you can keep that, put it in your pocket. Obviously, you want to try to maximize your TFSA account versus putting the money on a regular investment account. Problem is that there is a contribution limit. Be careful of that. Canada is incredibly strict with this. If you put more than the allocated contribution limit, you will pay a 1% fee on all the extra money that's in your TFSA account that should not be there per month. So you can end up paying more than 12%. And what is the contribution limit? I'm going to lay down the calculator in the comments below. So you're going to have a great idea on how much money you can put in your TFSA. Be warned though, do avoid retrieving money from the TFSA as well. So assuming that you have $20,000 of contribution room for the year, if you put $15,000 in and you retrieve $50,000 before the end of the year, you're only allowed to put another $5,000 into a TFSA account. That $50,000 that you have retrieved, you're not able to put it back into the account. So be absolutely careful and only retrieve it when absolutely necessary. And now let's talk about RSP. RSP is made with retirement in mind, but it has some tax saving advantages. I think it's best to explain this with an example. So you're making $60,000 per year. Let's assume it's been the first year you've been working at your job. Every single year, you get added a contribution room. Your RSP contribution limit equates to the salary that you have obtained last year times 18%. You've just worked for a full year, so now you have a contribution room of $10,800. FYI, the unused contribution room that you have for your TFSA can be carried over for the next. So assuming that your contribution limit was $20,000, so next year you'll have a contribution limit of around $26,000. And that increases every single year. So if you haven't used any of your TFSA contribution, that's all right. You've been accumulating it for all those years. So make sure you take advantage of it right away. And what's cool about the RSP is just like the TFSA, any income that you make in your RSP plan, it is tax-free. And what's even cooler about the RSP is that it can be used for tax deduction. So let's go back to the same example. You made $60,000 and let's assume you decided to put $10,000 into your RSP. Normally you'd be taxed for $60,000, but instead you'll actually be taxed for $50,000 instead. That's because the way the RSP works is that you take your annual income minus the amount of money that you have just put into your RSP for the year, and that equates to how much of the money is actually taxable. So in the end, the more you contribute to your RSP, the less you'll have to pay for your taxes. But be careful. Not only is there the contribution limit to worry about, just like the TFSA, but the conditions to retrieve the RSP are a lot more strict. That is because when you retrieve money from the RSP, that is now considered an income. So let's say next year you're making another $60,000, but you decide to take out the $10,000 from the RSP. Now, to the eyes of the government, you have not made $60,000. Instead, you have made $70,000. So now you'll be taxed for $70,000 total. So ideally, you want to retrieve the RSP funds when you're retired, because retrieving a lot of money and having a high income will put you in a pretty high tax bracket. But you want to try to always remain in the lowest tax bracket. So basically, you would like to retrieve the money whenever you are making little to no income. Hence, why you want to retrieve it when you're retired. You can also retrieve a certain sum of money to buy your first home, which, speaking of, you've got the FHSA account. This is actually a very recent way of investment. And honestly, it's not really that different from an RSP. It's got the exact same rules and benefits except for two details. One, your contribution limit is $8,000 per year for the FHSA account. And it can only be carried over once every year. And the max amount of money that you can put in an FHSA account is $40,000. Second, the money that you retrieve is exclusively reserved to buy your first home. Otherwise, it has the exact same similarities as an RSP account. Whew, we went through quite a lot, didn't we? So honestly, this is all you need to know about investing in Canada. All of this can maybe sound overwhelming. The best way for you to learn is to put legitimate money at least an amount that you're really comfortable putting that can allow you to understand the world of investments. I would highly encourage you to delve into GICs first and foremost in order to get a feel for how it works. It's completely safe and you know exactly the amount of money you will get by the end of the term. And then eventually, when you get more and more comfortable, delve into mutual funds. And of course, make sure to maximize your TFSA, RSP, and FHSA contributions as much as possible. But first and foremost, prioritize the TFSA. Because at worst, even if you make a mistake, you can easily fix it for the next year. So there's one thing that you can do for me right away that is super simple to do, is I want you to take the phone, call your bank and ask,
hey, I want to open up a TFSA GIC account right away.
And put an amount that you're absolutely comfortable with. And that will be your first step to investment. It only takes you a couple of minutes. That's it. So that will be all for me. Take great care of yourselves and remember to keep your life exciting. Mwah.